This conference will now be recorded.
Hi guys, welcome to the webinar with Andy Carmichael on Kanban Management Professional to create value and create services. I really thank you all for joining on Friday evening to learn something new from Andy. So let me take you through some important information. This is going to be the agenda for this webinar. So I'll start off with a bit introduction to innovation rules, and then I'll take you through the webinar logistics and introduce you to who Andy Carmichael is, who all are don't know him from earlier, and then I'll be passing on to Andy for his presentation. Once he's done with the presentation, we'll take you through the question and answer session. So some of you might have already known and have worked with us. So Innovation Roots basically is a leading training and consulting service provider, and we are into publishing as well. We publish the research-driven content, design, and resources. And we believe in creating things of great value through self-education and continuous learning. And we provide solutions for futuristic organizations that includes world-class agile transformation, coaching, assessment, training, and consulting services, along with proven Scrum framework coaching and training for product development teams. And we have a full range of Kanban courses and advisory for improving and optimizing workflow, as well as we have DevOps consulting, training, and transformation services available. So that's a bit about innovation roots. And this is where the important information lies for the webinar happening today. So I request you all to use LAN cable for joining this webinar. Wi-Fi connections are quite unstable. That has been experienced quite some time. And we request you to use high quality speakers or headphones for better sound quality. And all the participants, please keep your microphones muted all the time. And we'll be taking your questions through the chat box. So whenever you think you have a question and you want to ask it to Andy, please keep it in the chat box. After the end of the session, we'll be taking through the questions. And this webinar is being recorded. So we request you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can find the recording over there. Also, the slides would be available at Innovation Roots' slide share, so you don't have to worry about any content. So just enjoy this webinar for now, and we really appreciate your cooperation. I'm sure a lot of us know who Andy Carmichael is. We greatly know him as a co-author for Essential Kanban Condensed, and he's a coach, consultant, and a business builder who has been at forefront of process change and software development team for so many years. He's also a principal Kanban trainer and managing director at Huge.io in UK and Ireland. He's an author, he's a speaker, a blogger, and he's an active personality in the Kanban and Agile communities. And he's a Kanban coaching professional as well as an accredited Kanban trainer. So that's very brief about Andy. I can speak for him for like so many hours, but that's a really brief introduction of him. And now I pass it on to Andy. So Andy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nipur, and welcome everyone on this this webinar. I'm imagining you in Bangalore and elsewhere in India, driving through the rain and the traffic, and maybe you've reached your destination or you've not left the office yet. Welcome to you, and I hope in the next 45 minutes or so we'll have a good time talking about this topic. So when Nupur asked me to talk about what I would like to talk about, both on this webinar and in Lean Kanban India in August. The burning issue to me at the moment, and the thing that I've been thinking a lot about, is Kanban as a service. And not only thinking about it in the context of Kanban, but thinking about work in general, and what we do in knowledge work, whether that's in software development or product creation or whatever the work that we do in knowledge work, we are creating services for people. And I think this change of viewpoint to see our work as a service is a really vital one. It's at the heart of Kanban. And so I entitled the webinar to create value in order to create value. Perhaps I should say in a little bit more verse style. In order to create value, create service. Create service in the way you work for people. Create services, organizations that deliver services, and create great services for your customers. That is where value lies. And so that's my topic for today. Okay, that's a copyright slide, of course. There's an interesting quote here from Peter Drucker, one of the great management thinkers of the 20th century. And he said, there's only one valid definition of a business purpose: to create a customer. I think it's an interesting quote for several reasons, because first of all, if the customer doesn't exist in the first place, what are you doing in this business? What he's really saying is that our work in business is to create something that customers come and want. It's the whole organization in a business is not only creating the products that customers want and need, but also creating the level of service, the level of support around the products that we offer, that customers want to come to us to receive those services. So it's a great way to introduce this topic, that basically Kanban is a method which is interested in creating services. Actually, I just realized that what I haven't done is actually shared my slides. So bear with me one moment and see if this improves things. Can people see my slide? I'm presuming you can. Shout, thank you, Nupur, for telling me. I hope you can now see my slides. She says, not yet. So, no joy. So let me see where I can get to start sharing. This, of course, works perfectly. Try one or two other things. See if that works better. So if you can respond on the chat channel, Nupur, if I've managed to show you my slides. Yes. Well, that's very good. Of course, we test everything beforehand completely to make sure the service is fit for purpose, and then we try it in live and it doesn't work. So cool. Hope you can now see the quote from Peter Drucker. There's only one valid definition of a business purpose: to create a customer. That's where I was. So so continuing, a big part of what I've been thinking about, and this really relates to particularly how we see services, but is something called the Kanban lens. There's 4 elements of the lens, and they are basically all ways of changing the way that we look at work and organizations. And it's the idea of changing your viewpoint before you try and change any of the practices or the way that you're working or adopting new methods or whatever, change your viewpoint. And these are 4 elements in which Kanban changes our viewpoint. And to many people, when you see this, when you see in this different way, it has a radical effect on what you're doing. The first one is quite obvious, I think, if you're aware of what Kanban gives us. It's to see work as flow. And instead of seeing our work as, well, I'm a software developer, so my work is developing, or my work is in accountancy, so I do accounts all the time, or I'm a lawyer, so I write contracts, or whatever it is. Instead of seeing our work as carrying out the activity that we specialize in, see work and work items as pieces of value that we deliver to the customer, and they flow from a request or from a need of a customer to that need being met. And that's a completely different way and a completely different attitude that comes out of seeing that way than seeing our work as just getting in and doing the stuff which we're good at doing. It's a different way of seeing it, because very often just being busy at what we do doesn't result in flow to the customer, doesn't result in value being delivered. So that's the first part of the Kanban lens. The second part is to see workflow as knowledge discovery steps, or activities that we do moving something which is just an idea of a customer need to that point where the need of the customers have been fulfilled. It involves knowledge discovery, actually working at, say, what we're good at, or various stages that a work item goes through, reaching the point where it's something we can deliver to the customer and they get value from it. Now, the third and fourth bullet points is really where I want to talk about in this talk. It's about seeing knowledge work as a service in general. So knowledge work is where we are delivering items, but the items that we're doing are not primarily physical products. They are knowledge embedded in documents or software, or just the service that we provide to customers. Now, this is accountants and tax people tend to divide the world of work into services and products. And in that sense, it's quite obvious that most of us are involved in services. Most of us are not producing something physical, but we're delivering a service to a customer or to someone within the organization in order that they can deliver to the customer. So that is, might seem just an obvious step, but again, it's really fundamental, and it's getting this point that we come to work. What makes work worthwhile is that somebody is consuming the fruits of our labors. Someone wants what it is that we do, and they're receiving it effectively. So that's the first step. And the second step is how we see the organizations that we work in. Rather than seeing those organizations as hierarchies of departments and department heads and the CEO at the top of the pyramid, to see organizations as networks of services, because not everyone delivers direct to the customer. We deliver internally within the organization in order that the organization can deliver to customers. And this is really the root of value and where value comes from. So in order to see knowledge work as a service, we have to bring into our viewpoint the concept of the customer, not just the concept of the customer, but they actually know who our customer is. And that's a really important first step in using Kanban to deliver value. So it's true that for many of us, the consumer of our work is an internal customer, or an internal service within the network of services that ultimately deliver to the end customer. It's of course absolutely fine. We shouldn't lose step of who's the ultimate consumer of our work. But again, knowing who our internal customer is, knowing how our service can be made fit for that internal customer's purpose, so that they can deliver customer, is the crucial thing. And we're bringing this whole thing into, if we know that we're delivering a service and we know who the customer is, then we can focus on what makes our work fit for that customer's need. And that's not just the quality of what we deliver, but also it's the timeliness of that. And that's so much of what Kanban is all about. So, know your customer. Who is your customer? And it's worth thinking about, maybe taking just a moment to think about this. Okay, you do work, you go into work every day and you write software, or you write contracts, or you recruit staff, or you manage staff, or whatever. Who is the customer of the group of people that you work with? Know what you deliver, who you deliver it to, why they need it, and what makes it fit for purpose. That's the crucial element. And so the whole thing of this is that we shift from this busyness viewpoint into the delivering service viewpoint, because that is where the root of value is. As I was preparing this, and one of the things that it relates to is what we call in the Kanban Management Professional course, the static method. Starting to introduce Kanban in an organization needs us to think about this this customer-focused viewpoint of the world. So static stands for the systems thinking approach to introducing Kanban, and that that method, it really starts with this whole thing of find out who the customer is, find out what they request, how frequently they request it, what the size of the thing they requested is, what the demand looks like, how the capability is to deliver it, and what makes it fit for their purpose. Designing systems that meet customer need is really what it's all about, and what Kanban systems should be about. So often we think about Kanban as, well, it's post-it notes on a wall, it's to-do doing down as a simple process of, yeah, we've got all this stuff to do and we do it. If we don't see behind that there's a customer needing the work that we do, we're missing the point of Kanban. And so it's really important. So it's time really to tell you a story. And I think this is a picture actually of the beautiful island of Cuba, looking out over the sunset from a lovely resort my wife and I went to in 2014. And what a lovely island to visit, and lovely people, and we had a wonderful holiday. But there were one or two things that happened, particularly the way that the hotel was managed and the resort was managed, that made me think about this whole aspect of service. Some of you may have heard me tell the story about mojitos and beers, but the story I want to tell you today is about poached eggs. The restaurant in this particular resort had a beautiful display of breakfast. You can go in and choose any kind of food that you wanted to eat for breakfast. And of course, eggs were one of the things that appeared on the menu. This particular aspect of how the poached eggs were prepared, it just brings to me this contrast between doing our work, trying to be very efficient about the way we do it, and not thinking about the customer. And so I go down for breakfast and I want a poached egg. I like a poached egg for breakfast. So I go to the counter where poached eggs are being prepared. And what I see there is about 50 pre-prepared poached eggs under the hot lights. And I'm thinking, okay, I thought I wanted a poached eggs. I don't want those poached eggs. And of course, being this kind of person that I am, that I go into restaurants and start thinking about Kanban, I wanted to know what was going on behind this. There's a woman cooking poached eggs there, and she's obviously thought about, or perhaps the hoteliers, what's the cheapest way, or what's the most efficient way to get poached eggs, so that the individual poached eggs cost very little. And very often we're the same, we get fooled by the same stuff. What we think is, to make it efficient, you should do it at scale. You should do as many as possible. Because if I put 40 poached eggs into a pan, it takes me exactly the same amount of time as if I put one poached egg at a time. The difference is in the effect that it has on the customer, the fitness or purpose of our product. And too often, by batching stuff up into large delivery items, we miss delivering value to the customer. And it's a simple thing to fix. And in a sense, in the same restaurant, there's a short order chef with a queue behind his frying pan doing eggs to order, and it's not as efficient as a lady who can produce 40 poached eggs in 5 minutes. It's a very important lesson that we think about the way that we do things, not in terms of the cost per unit, but in terms of the value that we deliver to customers. And that's really the story behind my Cuban holiday and the poached eggs. So what has Kanban got to do with customers? So I've got a little picture here of what I call the Kanban Pillar. It appears on the front of the little Kanban condensed book, and we made a little 3D model. If you want to make a model yourself, there's a little URL there which you can. But what's interesting, and you look at the values, the principles, and the practices of Kanban, all of them are tied up with this idea of service and customers, delivering value to customers. Now, if you don't believe me, well, let's just have a look. It's all about value. So if we look at the values of Kanban, of course, I'm using values in a different sense here. These are the things that people who practice Kanban value, rather than talking about delivering value. The values of Kanban are what people who practice Kanban value themselves, what the method values. And it's interesting how this list of values was derived. It's actually produced before Mike Burrows produced the Kanban from the inside. He did various surveys with people using Kanban and looked at elements of the Kanban method to say, what is it about Kanban that we value, and that the kinds of virtues, if you like, that are a part of what we do. These 9 came up of it, and of course there's one in particular that I want to talk about: customer focus. But in a sense, respect for all the individuals involved, not just customers, not only that, but it's essential not only for the success of the venture, but to be worthwhile at all. And this is why I can get quite passionate about the idea of service and the idea of customer focus. And when I see processes that are not putting the customer at the center of it, and they're organizing people to do stuff, to optimize something other than the value received by the customers, something like, the cost per poached egg, and bring that into your own context. What is it that management are trying to maximize or minimize, generally profit and cost, and what are they ignoring if they do that, particularly to the detriment of this customer focus? What we believe in terms of using Kanban in management is that not only will it better result in fit for purpose and better results for customers, but it's better results for business as well. But we don't start by optimizing something other than what the customer receives and how they're going to receive it. Now, another side of that pillar are the agendas of Kanban, the things that Kanban introduces into the management agenda of what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. Again, we see service orientation in the middle there, but just quickly on the other ones, the sustainability agenda is about finding sustainable pace and improving focus. It's an internal focus to attract the best people, to keep the best people, and to keep people at their best. It's focused on what we as a service, as a group of people delivering value, of what we do. And this is where the whole idea of a Kanban system limiting work in progress to the point at which we can work efficiently and sustainably, that's really what that agenda is about. The one at the bottom is more focused on the organization and the competitive landscape. Are we working on the best thing? Are we working on it in the best way? Are we continuously improving and evolving in order to be the best? That's what the organization needs to do, and that's the agenda that Kanban brings into that management of the whole organization. Is really crucial. Not really what we're talking about, because I want to focus on that middle one, orientation agenda. And there we focus attention on the performance and the customer satisfaction. We improve things from the point of view of the service that we deliver to customer. So it's something really important. If you want to look at it from the principles and practices, well, the principles have 3 that are about change management. and 3 which are about service delivery, 3 which focus on understanding what the customer needs and meeting those expectations, managing the work and letting people self-organize around it. What Drucker said, this is a misquote of Drucker really, manage the work, not the workers. It's a curious phrase. I'm happy to come back to it in questions if you like, but manage the work, not the workers. When we think of our job as managers, I think many of you on the call will be managers. We often think, well, what gives me the headache every day? What am I trying to do? And it comes down to, well, how do I get people to do what they don't want to do or do it better than they have been doing and so on? If we turn things around to focus on what is the purpose of what we're doing? What is the work that we're delivering? How is that work being delivered to our customers and other customers getting used to out of it? We actually help to change the culture of everyone in the organization to focus on that and to begin to take responsibility for this whole aspect of service. It's impossible to deliver service with an organization unless individuals right down to the lowest level in the organization, if you like, have got some idea that they're involved in something which is meeting customers' needs. You may have heard the story of the guy who worked in NASA at the time of the moonshot, and say he was a janitor. He cleaned the floors and the toilets. What did he say about what his job was? I help people get to the moon. And whatever work we do, we've got some view of this purpose of fulfilling customers' needs. And the practices are similar. Again, the practices, there's no mention in these 6 general practices of Kanban that says customer anywhere or service anywhere, but that's what's behind it. All these practices involve seeing the work and the policies that determines how it's processed. And then from that visibility of work and policies, improving them and improving the process in an evolutionary fashion to deliver useful work. Evolutionary fashion, I've expanded it a little there, keeping and amplifying useful change, learning from and reversing or dampening, if you prefer that word, ineffective change. The idea that the whole idea of improvement and evolving in Kanban is based on this idea that small incremental changes which can be recovered from if they're not actually right changes, but which move us towards that goal of more fitness for purpose businesses. That's what it's all about. So even in these general practices which don't mention service and don't mention customer, it's there fundamentally within it. And if you want to highlight one word from that point of view, useful is the focus here. The value is the value appreciated by the customer. Now, you may not have heard of this one, but the lean decision filter is something that derived some time ago from work, some academic work involving Professors Mehta and Rafa with David Anderson, looking at how lean and the lessons within the lean approach can help us in knowledge work to improve the services. They came up with this quite simple 3-element phase of the lean decision filter. In other words, what should we focus on in the decisions that we make in order to make use of the lean insights? And they're these 3. Value trumps flow, flow trumps waste elimination, and waste elimination trumps economies of scale. I'm sorry to keep repeating the word trump, but basically it means value is more important than flow, and flow is more important than waste elimination. Waste elimination, which is the focus, one would say, of most of the literature around lean, although if you look at it more deeply, waste elimination is not the main thing about lean, but it's the emphasis when you start from massive industries and at scale services, moving from doing everything at the larger scale, we find that we can eliminate waste. If you think back to the poached eggs, the real tragedy of the poached eggs, nobody wants 40 poached eggs that have been under the lights for 15 minutes. They're all waste. And those who do have a poached egg cooked in that way are really sad that they had a poached egg. That's also waste. So by moving to smaller units that we deliver, not necessarily that the whole organization is smaller, but the delivery of value, the work items that we deliver are smaller items. And in that sense, we eliminate waste. But more important than that is that we focus on flow. We focus on this idea in Kanban that work items flow from ideas to value delivered, from needs of a customer to needs being met. And so seeing that flow, sometimes we're not looking at optimizing absolutely everything from an efficiency point of view. We want flow rather than efficient use of resources. Sometimes we're happy to spend time, like the short order chef cooking the individual eggs for customers. There's a little bit more what you might call waste in a pure focus on efficiency, in order that we get flow of value. But most of all, and the most important thing that this is telling us is that value is what we're after. It's not flow for the sake of flow or Kanban for the sake of Kanban. We want to deliver value to our customers, and that's where we come back to what's the crucial element of it all. So that's a reference to the paper. This actually is a 2008 paper. In 2018, this was cited and given a prize as the most cited paper about the application of lean to software processes. So it is an interesting paper in its sense, in itself. But out of that paper, this was distilled down into a very pithy phrase, which I think is very relevant in our context. So let's come back to the idea of a Kanban board, and really just to finish off, to sort of see that our focus on service, our focus on delivering value to the customer can be facilitated through the use of a flow system controlled by a Kanban board, particularly the idea of limiting work in progress so that we never start something that we can't see through to delivery and value. And if we don't, if we just think that, when a customer requests something, somebody starts work on that item, we miss the point of a Kanban system. A Kanban system which ensures that we don't get demand and capability out of balance. We balance it to the point that we don't start work until we're sure we can finish it. And that, again, that idea of using a Kanban system to deliver value is absolutely crucial to the method. The thing is, people think that Kanban systems is the whole of the method, and of course it's a small part of it, but it's crucial because it brings this ability to balance demand and capability so that we can deliver fitness for purpose services. Now, the title of the slide, Kanban for the team, the service, and the network of services, is the three levels of how we apply Kanban in organizations. It also corresponds to three of the courses that we deliver in the LKU syllabus. Kanban for the team Kanban practitioner courses and accreditation focuses on this flow of value at the team level, at the agile team level. So we would say 7 plus or minus 2, but actually we can have larger teams or smaller teams. What we're more interested in doing at the team level is making sure that we have got teams that we can deliver a complete service. And so using Kanban at the team level is primarily about making sure the team works at the sustainable pace and the sustainable level. We don't take on work, we don't start work that we can't deliver because of the limitations of the capability or the capacity of the team. At a more customer focused level, we talk about the service. And this change of viewpoint is something that very often confuses people. I can see teams, I can see departments, I can see business units in my organization, but where are the services? What are the services? In a sense, Kanban is calling for a change of how we see organizations, and maybe to some extent, ultimately some reorganization around it, but principally a different viewpoint to see services, this concept of a group of people responsible for delivering complete valuable services to our customers. And so that is a focus very much of the Kanban Management Professional training, that we see, first of all, how would we design a service using a Kanban system or multiple Kanban systems that interact for one service to a customer. And finally, the network of services, which is part of the second part of KMP, part of the Kanban Management Professional 2, the second 2 days of that training, where we look at actually there's more than one service in our organization. They interact with each other, they have dependencies on each other. And very often the limitations of the flow that we can get through multiple teams, multiple services, is because we need coordination and elimination of some of these dependencies which block work. So look at those three aspects of when you're thinking about Kanban systems, that we have Kanban systems at the team level, we have Kanban systems that are dealing with one service, and we need to think about how that service is designed, how the parts of it, the stages of it are put together to maximize the flow of value. And finally, the managing of multiple Kanban systems and multiple services that are needed in the overall organization. So those two are very much a part of the KMP syllabus, the first 2 days in KMP 1 and the second 2 days in KMP 2. So I'd recommend very much that you look further at that. The team syllabus, the team Kanban practitioner, is also something that we can deliver as distance learning or team learning. So that's also something that's a part of it. So Kanban, although we focus a lot about Kanban systems, it's not just about Kanban systems. I hope from this presentation and the focus that we put on services and the customer, that you're seeing that this is a method that is useful for starting from that viewpoint. Starting with that knowledge work is all about service, and the approach to continuous improvement is more than just the collection of general practices or the way that we use systems. It's a way of seeing, particularly it's a way of seeing that focuses on the customer and that results in value. So summarize, it's not really a summary, but Kanban is a simple method. Kanban itself is simple. The simple is not the same as trivial, and nor is it obvious. And I think I just bring this in as a parting thought, because hopefully some of the things that I've said help you to look at Kanban, or appreciate Kanban, which maybe you've been using for many years. Appreciate it is look at it from the point of view of the customer. Look at it from the point of view, I'm part of an initiative to transform my organization to deliver better services to the customer and bring that in. If we can get that idea going right the way through the organization, we'll see some radical change. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm very happy to take questions. I will bring in Nupur here maybe to help us in terms of facilitating those questions. But if you haven't asked a question yet, you can do that on the chat channel, or
I see one question coming in here, Andy. So there's one participant who was asking, should we need to think about customer or value? Customer wants to create for himself through service association. Okay, it is value customer wants to create for himself through service association. Most times customers want plain with sense.
You'll have to read it again, Nupur, because I not sure that I've got the main emphasis
Okay.
of what you're saying. So read it again, and then I'll give it a go.
Okay. Okay. So he wants to understand, should we think about customer or the value customer wants to create for himself
Mhm.
via service association? Okay. And he's saying most times customer wants plain airplane with sense. I mean, with very less money.
So okay, so should we think about the customer or the service the customer wants? And I think the answer to that is very much both.
Mm-hmm.
Is what behind the question, and maybe the person asking it can put more of this on the chat as well. That so maybe it's not always that we want the highest quality at the highest price. Maybe the crucial thing for customers is the price point of that product. Now, I would say the price point is part of the fitness for purpose of what we supply. There's no point in delivering a Rolls Royce at a price that customers can't afford if all they want is actually to share a bus to the station. It's not really understanding our customer if they say we want to get to the station and we say, well, here's a very expensive car, which if you buy, then you'll be able to drive yourself. That isn't the service the customer is looking for. I want to get to the station and a bus will do, provided it's less than this price. So included in what makes a service fit for purpose is the price point, and is also crucial from a Kanban point of view is the lead time. How long do I have to wait to receive this? And both those things are crucial. So I think I'm probably saying that, yes, we need to think all these things, but actually really we have to know our customer. We have to know what makes it fit for purpose. And of course, it's not, I'm not saying that we ignore the business aspects of profitability and return on investment and all these other aspects that get put in the way sometimes of us just focusing on the customers. Those things are crucial too, but they come from first of all focusing on delivering the right service to the customer. So if I've not got at the nub of the question, please come back on to me on that. Hopefully that's got somewhere.
Thanks, Annie, for answering that question. We have another question, which is about Kanban versus Scrum. I think you would have heard a lot about it. So the person wants to know what are the key elements to determine that Kanban will work better for our team than Scrum?
Good. So, of course, every time I talk about Kanban, this question arises because, in a sense, we have categories of things and methods that people use for software development get put in one category. Kanban is used for teams that do software development, so is Scrum. I think the main thing I want to start with and want to talk is that these methods are in different categories themselves. They can both be used at the same time in the same context. And if you have a context for developing software in particular, where the environment that Scrum needs matches your context, use Scrum, absolutely fine. When you do that, you can also use Kanban to understand the flow of value through there, how to limit work in progress, and also how you improve from what you're doing at the moment. Kanban is much more a method about improvement, and improvement on what basis? How do I know if I've improved? And I hope some of the things I've said about service and customer are clues to what we're looking there. That implies value, and what we're trying to do is maximize value. So it's not a question of, it's not totally a question of either or, because we can use both and if you use Scrum, you have to understand the context in which Scrum was designed and in which Scrum works. And if you have that context, it's a very good method. Now, sometimes you can change your context. This is different to the change approach in Kanban, but you can change your content to say, well, we're going to reorganize, we're going to change people's job titles, and we're going to have a completely different way of working. so that we match the context in which Scrum works. That's also possible, but Kanban suggests a different approach to change, which is start from what you do now, understand the processes in your organization as they're actually a practice, not just for software development, for software development, sure, but understand what the process currently is and use Kanban to improve it. Visualize your work, visualize the workflow that the work goes through, understand the flow of value within that, and then look at changes that enhance the flow of value and ensure better results. So that that's the summary of it. Scrum itself is a flow method, and that again, you have a starting point of a work item and a finishing point of a work item. That may not be the full scope of value delivery to customers. That's another important point. So if you're looking at things at a higher level than a Scrum team, where multiple Scrum teams work together to deliver value, then again, Kanban is going to be useful in the understanding of that flow of a wider scope of where do the requirements come from, where do these user stories that Scrum teams implement, where do they come from? What is the process of getting features or epics or customer needs through to the point where we can give stories to a Scrum team and for them to get them to done, and then how do those done stories get to the end customer in terms of delivered software? Again, Kanban's going to help us look at that whole flow as well as the flow within teams. So I'm sort of avoiding the question, I usually do, but I think it's sometimes not terribly helpful to say, well, what it is Kanban or Scrum. So come back to me on that one as well. And so it's not as though I can give you a question that will ensure this question will never get answered again. I wish I could, but what I would say is if you're a master in one method, if you're a Scrum master or a Kanban master, you should probably look to be at least a beginner in the other method. So understand those methods and what they're about from the authors of the method rather than from critics and tool vendors, because that doesn't give you a great idea of what the method is. And having got that starting point, then you'll be able to use those tools even if the process that you're using in your company is a different method, because all methods, all processes change over time, and that's the whole agenda of improvement.
Okay.
Hope that's useful.
Yeah, it is certainly. So moving on to the next question, Andy, there's one person who's asking, what are your top 5 KPIs picks in Kanban system? And he adds on to that we are a application support team and we want to implement Kanban as per experts. Any place where we can step-by-step approach or guide to help? Some guidance he's looking for. He's into application support. Yeah, over to you.
So top 5 of something. So I think what was it? Top KPIs, key performance indicators of what?
Yeah. So he's in like, what are your top 5 KPI picks in a Kanban system?
So I would say the 2, and forgive me if I don't give you the other 3, but 2 key performance indicators of a Kanban system are delivery rate and lead time. And so how much stuff do we deliver? How many work items get completed in a time is one simple indicator, but of course there's variability in work items, so they may not all be the same. Nevertheless, some indicator of the rate at which you can fulfill demand, delivery rate. The other one is lead time, and I would put more emphasis on lead time initially, because lead time is a key indicator of agility, our ability to move in response to customers' need or in response to competition in the marketplace. So just emphasizing lead time for a minute. What I mean by lead time is the time from accepting a request from a customer or accepting that this is a need of a customer that we're going to fulfill in our product to when that item is available to customers. Now, very often what people look at is what I call time in development or time in process of some kind, whatever the process is, time in a Scrum team, for example, from when this part of the process starts on an item to when this part of the process ends on an item. So it's just part of the lead time, just part of the system lead time, the part which I'm responsible for in the system, but most importantly, part of the customer lead time, part of the time that a customer waits from asking for something to getting something. Now that is the crucial thing. And I would say in businesses, look at when did you commit money to do something, whether it was a project or a feature or a bug fix or whatever. When did you specify specifically what you're going to do and commit money to it? Because that is your commitment point from, if you like, the starting point of a lead time. Now, it doesn't matter what method you're using or what project management approach or program management approach, whatever else. You can look at the business and find out, when did we decide to do it? It's not when the customer asked for it, it's sometime later when we said the customer's asked for it, or we've identified this need of the customer, and now we are committing to do it. We put money and resources in order to do it. We've got resources available to start now. That's the start of our lead time. And when does it actually get live in the customer's environment, or when does the customer receive that item? That time is, whatever method you use, that time is measurable. And what we should be doing in terms of key performance indicators of our processes is get that shorter than it is. Because if it is, you know, an 18-month project that you decide to do something and 18 months later you've got it, well, sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes that's the only way the organization can work. But that's the time that you're waiting before that value is realized. And in some cases, before you know whether it's valuable or not. It's only when the customer gets it that you can tell whether it's a valuable item or not. So 18 months is a very long time. Can we get that down to a year, to 9 months, to 3 months, or even shorter than that in terms of valuable items? Now, very often we talk about the time it takes to develop a story. A developer gets hold of the story, writes some code, changes the system, tests it in the test environment, gives it to the tester, tests it in the test environment, and lo and behold, the story is done. But has the customer got hold of it? Is there some larger part of the process? That's the key performance indicator in terms of agility and our ability to respond to customers as their needs change. So only 2, but come back to me on the other 3. Now there was another long part of the question. I think there's another question. So will that do on the first part of the question? So ask me the other part, Nupur. What's the other part about?
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So there's this question which talks about how does the business engagement should be in the context of service model. Is that we sell work or sell body hours? So selling work, he explains, customer is not worried about how many people we use or how much time they spend. So he's asking how it should be in the context of service model.
So I think either is fine. Either can work. And again, the crucial thing out of what I said, because I can't answer that question for your context, but the crucial thing of what I said is know your customer. Know what you're capable of doing and what it is that your customer wants from you. What makes the work that you do fit for your customer's purpose? In that context, it may change over time as whether you charge time and materials or whether you say, well, I can do that feature for X amount. And clearly what's happening in those 2 choices is a risk transfer of, you know, if I say, well, I'll charge you time and materials, it's your risk at how long it'll take. And that's why it appears as unattractive to customers, because they don't have control about the way you're working. And they may well prefer to say, well, here's a specification of a new feature. Tell me how much that's cost and I'll pay you that, and you can put the profit in terms of the price you charge me. Now, by and large, I don't want to get into sort of contract engineering, but by and large, agile processes suit more a time and materials type approach, because they naturally, by the fact that they make work visible and they make workflow visible, and they can make the flow of work through a system visible, all that can be made visible to the customer. And that transparency actually gives customers confidence that they can decide later on what it is they want delivered, and see items flowing through, small items flowing through, which they pay for bit by bit. So an agile process can facilitate a good result for customers from a time and materials type contract, as opposed to we won't show you anything of what's going on in the meantime, but give us a spec, we'll interpret that as in the minimum way, do a fixed price bid for it and deliver that to you. Both those can have bad effects for the customers, and both of them can have good effects for the customers. So it's not so much that element of the contract structure, it's how you work to meet your customers' needs. And you can see really what the customer would like is certainty over outcomes and late decision making in terms of what is included in the delivery that's made to them. Because particularly in software products, we don't know which of the many great ideas that we've had are really good ideas from the customer's point of view. It's only when we deliver it to the customer that we see, actually, they use this feature, they don't use that feature. So in a sense, to facilitate that late commitment to specific features of a product, a more collaborative and transparent process is going to facilitate that. More experimental, more learning as we deliver, and these kinds of things. So, but you know, it's a business decision at the end of the day. Yeah, maybe I've answered it. I'll tell you one quick question, which is I was involved in a transformation, an agile transformation, as we call it in inverted commas, in a large utilities company in the UK. And we were implementing primarily a Scrum method with other aspects to it. It was certainly Scrum at scale, so large number of Scrum teams collaborating. And the problems that we had on that were clear to management, and it's early days of implementing those kinds of things, all sorts of technical problems behind it. Anyway, new CTO was appointed, and he put a different emphasis in terms of what he wanted to do in terms of getting stuff done in the software realm. You're very much more in favor of specifying things, getting it outsourced, getting that somewhat, a team possibly in India, possibly elsewhere, to take a thing away and do it. And the crucial thing he's saying was, what we need is on time, on scope, on budget. And really, his strategy for getting on time, on scope, on budget was to outsource a spec for a piece of work that would come back within that, or they wouldn't have to pay at all. So that was what made it fit for his purpose. I asked him the question, he says, what do you see a conflict between on time and scope and budget as your KPI, if you like, and agility in the process? And he said, well, we will achieve on time, on scope, on budget through agile working. The thing that is missing in that response is that agile working implies we can decide later about what we do. We learn as we deliver things what we should deliver. And so that's really using agile to deliver on time, on scope, and budget in a traditional project management sense, to my view, is missing the point of, in a sense, the whole agile movement, but certainly in that sort of context. So yeah, multiple things in there, but hopefully there's something of the, again, if whoever asked the question wants to come back on me, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. So moving on to next question, there's one guy who wants to understand how to bring customer on board to attempt Kanban. And he's like, this is not to compare with any other agile methods, but how to get the clarity.
So yes, crucial. We do need the customer on board if we want to introduce a Kanban system. And very simply, is because the customer needs to understand we want to improve lead time, but we're improving lead time from when we commit together to do a piece of work to when you receive the work. So there are some very good case studies, and the one in David Hanson's Blue Book, the Kanban, often called the Kanban Blue Book, but that book has a story about the XIT department in Microsoft that adopted a Kanban process and changed the way they were doing work from SLAs around when estimates would be delivered to the customer, when those estimates would be scheduled and how it would be done. The starting point for that process was not good from the customer's point of view. And this, I would say, is in a sense where you introduce any change, but when you introduce any change that involves the customer, that there has to be some pain point, some reason why there's dissatisfaction, probably from the customer's point of view and probably internally, or possibly both, where those two things have to come together. And so, yeah, that's really what it's all about. And I can't really say more than that in terms of looking at. Sorry, I'm being interrupted here. No, we'll just have to just take the interrupt for 1 second. Well, sorry, apologies about that. It's, I am back. Yeah, so and having come back, of course, the middle of the sentence has gone. So Nupur, help me out here with the question. Can you hear me here?
I can hear you. I can hear you. So you were going about how you bring the customers on board to attempt Kanban. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And severe apologies for that. So in order to bring customers on board, you have to have there's some pain point which is causing you to want to change and understanding what that is. So in the case of the case study in the Blue Book, the real problem was the slow response ultimately to the request coming from 4 different customers through a small change process. What they did to respond to that was involve the customers and say, look, we're going to change the process. So we're not so much focused on the whole backlog and estimating the whole backlog, but on focusing on one item at a time and delivering that within a short period of time, like 21 days. And to change around the way, so if the customer knows that they're going to receive the committed items 21 days later, that's a massive change to what they're experiencing at the moment, which is items could take 6 months, 9 months from when they're entered into the system. So changing that round allows the customer to work in a different way and gets benefit. But the crucial change from a customer's point of view in a Kanban system is there's deferred commitment. I don't commit to do your work because you've asked me for it. I commit to do your work when we both agree this is the next most important thing to do. And I have capacity within the service in the system that we're dealing with, I have capacity to deliver it. And so that was the thing that transferred that particular example of a customer needing a change, and the service wanting to do something different, wanted to use a Kanban system, and that would impact in the way that the customer had used the service previously, but they could show that they were going to get better results at the end of the day. And again, I come back to those 2 KPIs, delivery rate and lead time. If you can show serious improvement in lead time and similar or improved delivery rate as well, then that's going to be a great benefit to the customer. Much more visibility to the customer, much more certainty of when things are going to be delivered. Those are all customer benefits. So that's what I would say is the way to approach it. What are the pain points at the moment? How do we look at the flow of work within our systems that we're managing with Kanban, and how do we anticipate that will deliver customer benefits to the customer? So start with the pain points of the customer.
Yeah. So we have two more questions, Andy, to answer. One is, which I got confused. I thought it is of same person, but these are two different people. So Naveen has asked, we are an application support team and we want to implement Kanban as per experts. Any place where we can step-by-step approach or any guide to help?
So yeah, I mean, I think the best guidance in terms of adopting Kanban in a process is to really get familiar, first of all, what Kanban systems are and what the principles that we talk about in Kanban, but also that approach which I mentioned in the presentation, static, a systems thinking approach to introducing Kanban. It's basically going back to those fundamentals of why does this service exist? First of all, what is the service and what's its purpose? What makes the service fit for its customer's purpose? Who are the customers? What's the pattern of demand? What's the capability within the service, and so on? Those steps in static are part of the focus that we do in KMP1 particularly, but the KMP accreditation in general. So understanding that approach, is one of the key ways to do it. Mike Burrows talks about that, and there's a summary of static in his book, Kanban from the Inside. It's mentioned in the Essential Kanban Condensed as well, but probably a good way to do that, if you've not got access to a Kanban coach or whatever to help you through that process, is the KMP1 program, which spends quite a lot of time in that course on what is static, how to apply it, how to design the system. It does come down to understanding, what service you're delivering and what makes that service fit for purpose.
Okay, so there's another question about which book you recommend to refer the most.
Well, of course, mine. Why would I say anything else? There are lots of good books. On the slides I have put, I think it's the next slide. So I have put a few references and credits on the next slide here. I'm hoping it's going to come up in a minute and not go past it. Here we are. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so there's David Anderson. The first one is alphabetical, but it just happens to be his book first, Kanban Successfully Revolutionary Change for Your Technology Business, 2010 book. It's a sort of foundational book. It has that case study from Microsoft on a change to a process from the customer need and involving customers in the change that they introduced. So that case study does get discussed in that book. I also mentioned, I think further down, Mike Burrows' book, Kanban from the Inside, that has a brief summary of static. It also looks at the Kanban principles and practices from the point of view of the values of people that practice Kanban. And those 9 values came out of that work by Mike Burrows. What else? So, okay, there's a book on leadership, David Marquette, Turn the Ship Around. I think the reason I wanted to, I referenced that is because Drucker, as I think I mentioned, says manage the work, not the workers. What David Marquette says is leadership creates the environment in which people can do better. And so it's the job of management to create an environment. If you like to create the system, if you're into systems thinking, but sometimes system gets used in a different sense. But again, great book on leadership, really interesting story as well. So that's another great book. So
Andy, one question is there any particular book to refer for basics on Kanban for the non-development people?
the non-development side is really important, and we all sort of talk about it. I'm not sure that there's a book dedicated. There are case studies around. That's the best place in terms of Kanban and IT, Kanban in marketing and sales, and so looking around the blogs and the references from conference presentations and so on is probably more where you're finding that being reported. One of my own conference presentations was from a company called ClearVision, where the marketing team adopted Kanban alongside the development team doing development of features, and the coordination of two different services within the organization was was a reference for that. I'll add a link to that to these to this bibliography, and then you can look that up in if that's of interest.
So if we have a little bit of time, Andy, I have one question if you can answer that, since we are talking about creating value. So how do you define value? Because it's a very subjective matter. It could be different for different people and different companies. So how do you define value? What are the basic characteristics?
Yes, it is. It is difficult to define it. I think you might say, well, we'll know it when we see it, but understanding that value is a multifaceted aspect. So of course we talk about value in terms of in dollar terms, in terms of profitability to a company, or savings that we make because we have a new part of a product delivered to us and so on. One of the key ways of trying to numerically express value is something we call cost of delay. So very often we can understand better value in terms of if we don't have this new part of service, or we don't receive this product or this addition to the product, what will it cost us? And so in that context, you can begin to say, well, instead of having this product, we have to employ people to do it. They have salaries, they have overheads, etc. And we can cost that. And every month that we don't have it, we are incurring costs. So that is a way to begin to quantify value. But very often we have to look at it because, so that is one approach. But I would say that quantification of value is an advanced topic rather than something we can all do and get immediate effect from it. We have to perhaps look instead at that at the dimensions of value in terms of, it's cost savings, or it's new business, or it's opening a market, or it's causing learning within the team so that we know what to do next, or it's giving feedback in another aspect of the market or the customer and so on. All those different aspects can be put together in a view where we actually just plot in a qualitative way, whether it's high or low, value on those dimensions. And then we can compare different initiatives in terms of what we think is the most important in terms of those plots of value on different dimensions. Qualitative feelings of it. So that is one approach to do it. And those spider diagrams that actually sort of plot out value on multiple dimensions are available now in some tools to actually look at value in that way. But something you can do in so without going down and explaining all that aspect to it, first of all, there are multiple dimensions to it. Secondly, cost of delay is a way to quantify value in terms of not just what's the total benefit that a piece of action or a piece of work might give us, but when is it relevant to receive that, maybe on a fixed date, or maybe over time we increase, the earlier we have it, the more we get from it. And then using multiple dimensions of value to assess and compare different initiatives on that basis. So hopefully that's the start of what is a complex question.
Thank you so much, Andy, for answering all the questions. Guys, thank you so much for being with us on this webinar so late in the Indian time. And in case if you have more questions, I appreciate you send across the questions over community@innovationroots.com. So I would try getting them answered from Andy and get back to you as soon as I can. So please feel free to drop your questions at community@innovationroots.com. I'm just putting on that in the chat box in case you want to note it down. And I'll try getting them to you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your time. And thank you so much, Andy, for being here and sharing your insights and knowledge with us and being patient with all of our questions. Thank you so much.
No, well, thank you, Nupur, for sharing. And I know it's, well, great to have you sharing it. Look forward to the next time. I will add some of those to the slides, which will be available on the Nupur on Innovation Roots website. And look forward to next time.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.